particularly bad. So, Deborah.
Thanks, William. Yeah, the four areas. One of the in terms of internal, the communications workshop, I found that very useful and insightful. It was good to hear Chris Dawson's perspective on the agenda. I still do have concerns about the methodology for the KPIs in the service level agreement, but I'm sure that will come up. One of the issues that I did raise was, again, a slight concern around it could just be a language thing or a values thing, that employers and clients, the aim was to engage with, whereas members, it was to communicate with. And it felt sort of quite a bit weaker. And there was a suggestion that some of the letters, the standard letters were going to be changed, and certainly I wasn't comfortable with the whole tone of the new suggested wording. But I do believe we are going to get an opportunity to contribute to that.
Oh, I think the content of the training we can discuss at the relevant point. This is really about which training was actually helpful or not helpful.
Yeah, and just a final point on that one. The presentation by Mukhtar was excellent, and I'm really delighted with the new website. Other training that was very helpful was the two external ones about the future, another extraordinary year, about the strategic opportunities, and the final external was responsible investment, which again was very insightful.
Okay, thank you. Carl. Nope.
No specific training events that I've attended since the last time, William.
Yep. Okay, thanks. Matthew.
No real comments. I think I did attend training in February, but it was such a long time ago, and I've not got anything particularly enlightening to add.
Okay, right. Thank you, Tony.
I mean, I've got nothing. I've got nothing new to add, really. I mean, I think certainly the last workshop we had, which doesn't seem to fall part of the training record, but I thought that was helpful to understand the communication strategy and the website issues and so on. So yeah, keeping abreast of what's going on has been very helpful, and I think those workshops are good whenever I get a chance to participate. I've not done any external training for a little while, so yeah.
Yeah, I think it was only of a 2020 record, which is why the 2021 one wasn't there. Right. Yvonne.
Yeah, it's just that last workshop that's already been touched on, Mukhtar's overview of the new fund website, which is very welcome, and it's a very good overview, thank you. And the comms presentation as well, which if nothing else highlighted that there's been an issue with emails and that Blackpool haven't received any for about 6 weeks. But we've had that sorted now.
Good. Catherine.
Thank you. By contrast, I found that the 23rd of March workshop over full. I felt that the agenda was sufficiently full with the local pension partnership communications strategy, and there was enough information for me to fill the entire workshop. And then we had, although it was interesting to hear about the website, I just felt it was too much to cram into one workshop. Just a comment.
Yep. Okay, thank you. Mike, did you want to make any comment about the kind of overall training record? I mean, it seems to me that all members have been attending good training, which is something which I think should be noted and commended. But Mike, do you want to comment?
Only to say that, as you would perhaps expect, the opportunities have been perhaps somewhat reduced due to the pandemic. But I think, having said that, we have been able to continue to provide certainly the internal training through workshops. There have been a few external things that have also been done online. So I think the record kind of, especially when it's taken with previous records, there is a sort of a good body of evidence there in terms of board members training and knowledge with regard to the subject.
Good. Right, thank you very much. So we are asked to note the training record. Sorry, Deborah, you've got a hand up.
Just to pick up on Mike's point there, I certainly have been able to attend many more because they've been online. So you know, it is certainly a development that I've welcomed. This training has been much more accessible.
Yeah, and I think just going back to the point that Chair made in a previous report, it would very much be my intent. Whilst I'm not a spokesman for the County Council, it's very much my intention with regard to training for the board and the Pension Fund Committee that we would continue to do that training online, regardless of the restrictions being lifted to do, because I think experience has shown that that there is a greater uptake, and that can only be a good thing.
Okay, thank you. Are we happy to note the training record? Yep, okay, that's done. Item 7 is my contribution to the annual report of the fund. I have noticed one, I think, kind of mistake, which is, Tony, I think you were present on the January meeting, at least for part of it, and you're noted as being absent.
Yes, well, I was just checking that because the minutes earlier on said I was there and left a little early, as opposed to saying I wasn't there at all. I couldn't remember whether I was there or not in October.
Gosh.
But that's beyond my memory.
I think, yeah, okay.
You were definitely present, Mr. Pandy.
Yep. Okay. So if you could amend that, but apart from that, I got no. Apart from that, I think I'll open it up for questions. So, does anybody wish to ask any questions or make any comments about my report? No, I've kept you all happy, have I?
Yeah.
Okay, in which case, are we happy to send, if you can just approve that, please, so they can go into the report and accounts? Yep, okay, thank you. Item 9 is the risk register review. And this is, Mukhtar's going to lead the item. If I can just start off by saying that this is not reviewing the existing register.
Have we skipped an item? Sorry, William. Was there not regulatory update 8?
Sorry, V?
Item 8.
Item 8.
Item 8, my apologies. My apologies. I missed it out. Sorry, Colin. Item 8, the regulatory update. Colin, you normally lead this. I'll hand over to you for this.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I'll run through this very quickly. The first item is almost a standing item on the regulatory update, which is about the 95k cap. You're probably aware of all the goings on with the government. They were due to go to a judicial review for these amendments. They've pulled out and basically revoked the exit cap regulations, with the result being we're back where we were before all these were introduced last November. However, it is anticipated that it will come back in some form. The problem we've had previously is that the two sets of regulations between the HM Treasury and our own LGPS regulations were completely out of sync. So what they have promised is that if and when it is reintroduced, they will be brought in at the same time, and that the regulations will hopefully be in sync with each other. It remains to be seen what they actually bring back, because there were some contentious issues in there about including pension strain redundancy payments within this 95k cap. But it's gone away for the moment. Some funds, some employers will have had some issues with this because of payments they may have made in this interim period. I can confirm for the Lancashire Fund that's not the case, and we haven't got any issues to sort of go back and resolve. So from that perspective, that was good. Second item is around some policies that we introduced, and they were part of the Pension Fund Committee papers that you've probably already seen. But just to reiterate that the employer risk side of the work is now moved to our team. So that happened on the 1st of April. So this moved from LPP to us, and we've recruited Julie Price to my team, and we'll be looking at employer risk going forward. The things that we're going to be looking at initially around employer security, and the fact if we've got appropriate security or bond arrangements in place for some of our more higher risk employers. So that's something that we're starting now together with reviewing all the processes were handed across to us. McLeod is obviously another ongoing issue. We have a meeting with LPP next week as part of their client forum. Part of that, one of the workshops is going to be about McLeod. So that's sort of looking at the sort of project plan that we might need to put in place in making sure that the McLeod implementation is correctly adhered to. One good thing for the Lancashire Fund is that all the necessary data has continued to be collected even post the new care scheme. So we're in a good position in terms of the data that we hold. The same can't be said for all the client funds. So I think from a Lancashire point of view, we just need to keep an eye on that any resources are not sort of stretched away from our own fund. I'm just going to move on to item 5, which was just to note the employee contribution rates. So this is an annual update of those contribution rates, and that's applied from April this year. Item 6 was an increase to the minimum pension age. So there was a consultation on that, which is HM Treasury consultation about moving the pension age from the minimum pension age rather from 55 to 57. The consultation actually for that one closes this week. LPPA have done a response to that, and they involved the client funds in formulating that response. The fund itself hasn't, but we will expect a further consultation which is specific to the LGPS rule changes, and there might be things in there around the sort of protections that they talk about. So we'll certainly look to do a response to that particular consultation. The budget's been and gone. Not an awful lot to report on there, other than a change to the fact that the lifetime allowance is frozen. Sort of linked to the McLeod was the cost control mechanisms. So there's been some further developments there. So these were put on hold because of the McLeod issue and the potential costs that McLeod might bring to the fund. So there's been a statement that they're going to resurrect that now and start looking at the cost control mechanisms. So what would happen potentially is if the cost cap is breached, then normally what would happen is that there would be a change to the benefit structure of the scheme to sort of cover that increased cost. What they've said is that that won't happen now, but that if the cost floor if the cost floor is breached, so this is which was the case when it first came out, then they will be still looking to do potential amendments to the benefit scheme, which will improve benefits to members. And the final one I want to talk about is the GMP indexation. So that's for another consultation around the pension increase that funds have to apply to a guaranteed minimum pension element of benefits. This is has been going on for some time as well, and there's been 2 previous consultations where the outcome has been that the fund has remained liable to pay the pensions increase on these guaranteed minimum pensions. Previously it was the state, and each time those consultations sort of pushed it into the long grass a little just to review again whether that situation should continue. In effect, this latest consultation has put a line in that, and it will always be a fund responsibility now for the GMP indexation. GMPs themselves ceased around 97, so it is an historic thing that will sort of phase out, so that liability will decrease over time, but it's not something unexpected from us as a fund. There was another item which was around the good governance, and I'll just hand over to Mukhtar just for that particular section. Thank you.
Thank you, Colin. Just briefly around the good governance, and I know Carl did pick up on this as well as part of the audit issue and stuff. But the good governance projects have been going on for quite a number of years now. I think it actually started in 2019, and the Scheme Advisory Board commissioned Hyman Robertson to do some work. They've completed phase 3. There's been 3 phases of this piece of work, and the culmination is the proposals that you see there. I think the point that Carl did raise around the biannual independent governance review was part of the proposals from phase 2. Phase 3 mentions a number of points, and they're all listed there. And the kinds of things that the proposals do put forward are that funds have an LGPS senior officer, they manage conflicts of interest, they have representation on the boards and committee, skills and training, service delivery, key performance indicators, business planning process. From a very high level, I think we cover a lot of them. In an area which currently which Sean has already touched on, is we are looking at our service, doing a service review. So service delivery, we can do a little bit more work on as part of our strategic plan. But these are proposals that will go to MHCLG and will then probably form some kind of regulatory update or statutory update for funds to follow. Thank you.
Good, Colin and Mukhtar, thank you very much indeed. Any questions on any of those items?
Do you want me to raise any issues?
Yep, Catherine.
Because this was my area of responsibility to look at this. I was just looking back at the McLeod issue, so that's item 3. And it says that to assist the process, there was a McLeod implementation group, and a number of documents for administrators and employers have been produced. I'm just wondering how useful are these documents, and will they be of use to our scheme?
Yes, they will. I mean, these are some of the documents that we'll be picking up. I mentioned the client forum, which is next week. So these are the kind of things that we'll be sort of focusing our attention in terms of moving forward in the project plan. So yes.
Thank you. There's 2 other things. One was on number 8, that when you dealt with about the cost control mechanism, I'm not sure whether it is unlikely that if the cost floor is breached, despite the implementation of the McLeod remedy, it says increases in benefit accrual or reductions in contributions. I'm just wondering, will this mean a lot of work if that happens?
If they look to adjusting contributions, then no, it'll just be a change probably in the table that's on in that same report. So they'll probably just reduce the banding level. So that's a very sort of straightforward exercise.
Yeah.
If they look at benefit accrual, then yes, they'll potentially change in the calculation and a knock-on effect to LPP admin resources if that's.
Okay, yeah, and I think the other one you dealt with, it was about the guaranteed minimum pension. So you said that the work would be tailing off because of when the last GMP was in 1997, so that will just slowly decrease. So the amount of work will tail off. Would that be right?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the administration resource, we're already doing it now. So the full indexation is being applied. So there's no change basically to what's happening currently. So the comment there about the tailing off is in terms of the liability to the fund, but we've already accounted for it anyway. So it would have only gone less, if anything. So.
That's good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good. Any other questions or comments? Yes, Deborah.
On item 2 of the report, Colin, the last paragraph about the employers possibly needing a guarantor, do you envisage any problems with that in relation to the employers involved in our scheme?
Yes. To put it bluntly, we've got a lot of employers in the scheme. Some of them have been there for a very long time, and they're the type of organisations that we wouldn't necessarily introduce to the scheme now. So these, like we've got some charities that are admitted bodies. So there's no way that they're going to be able to put adequate security in. So that we've got a range of options to deal with this in terms of potential investment strategies for these organisations. There's new flexibilities introduced by the new policies that came in recently. So it's about managing some employers. Other employers we dealt with recently are okay with it, and in terms of putting bond arrangements, they've got adequate sort of resources to be able to do that. But it's quite a big piece of work, Deborah, and it will involve sort of discussions with employers around what the best options are for both them and the fund.
Good. Anything else on Colin's regulatory update? We are asked to note that, so are we happy to note it? Yep. Okay, thank you. Now, I did commit to introducing a short break in these meetings, so I'd like to suggest that we take a short break now for 5 minutes and then take item 10 before item 9. And the reason is that Janet, I can't remember her saying, Janet Morland Smith is going to be attending from LPP, and that'll just give her a chance to kind of come and log in. So would you be happy if I took item 10 before item 9?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So if we could, it's now 3 minutes past. If we could be back by, is 8 minutes past okay, or do you want a couple of minutes longer?
Chair, can I just remind members that it isn't possible to pause the live stream of the meeting. So by all means, have your break. Just be aware that the live stream will continue.
Right. Be careful what you say.
I didn't say that, Chair.
I did. Okay, so see you back in about 5 minutes time then. Thank you. Mukhtar, is he there? Sean, is it possible, because I meant to ask Mukhtar to call Janet and ask her to dial in. I'm not sure whether that's happened or not.
Yeah, we've just asked her to dial in
Right.
about now, so she should be joining us any moment. I can't see that she's on the participants list yet, but she is dialing in.
Right.
Presume Mike will need to admit her.
That may be the problem.
Yeah.
I'll admit to when she's in the thing, Mukhtar.
Is she not in yet?
Doesn't appear to be.
I'll give her a call. Yeah, I'll give her a call.
Sorry about the delay here. If she's going to be delayed, we'll go back to item 9. We'll just hang on another minute.
She's just joined the lobby now,
There she is.
and
There she is, yeah.
there you go.
Super. Janet, welcome. No, she's not there yet. Oh.
Almost. There we go.
Right. Okay, Janet, welcome. Right, we're moving on to item 10 now, not item 9, which is the Lancashire County Pension Fund Breaches Report, Q4. And our task here is to note the account, but we thought it would be helpful if Janet just introduced it. So Janet, over to you.
Thank you. So yes, Mukhtar asked me to provide a paper for you regarding breaches that have been reported on the Lancashire County Council's account. And I also provided a paper that explains how LPPA now record and manage any breaches that are recorded. So we have, I think previously it was mainly data breaches that were recorded prior to myself joining LPPA. But since I came on board, I have now split that out so that we now not only record data breaches, which are obviously important. I am the data protection officer for LPPA, so we take those extremely seriously. But I also think that we need to manage and have visibility of breaches that either impact on the pension regulators code of practice or on our own process breaches. So where LPPA have set a policy, or we have standard procedures that we follow for certain activities, if somebody fails to follow that process or doesn't apply the policy as intended, then again, we want those to be reported as a breach so that internally we can control the way that our people manage the activities and the casework that they do. So I did. I can't see your pack, so I'm not sure what you've got visible, whether you can actually see the table of the breaches that were reported in the last quarter.
We can see your kind of policy document, and then we do have data on that. Mukhtar, do you want to just introduce what we can see?
Yeah, thank you, Janet. Yeah, I can do. I did a covering report, so I'll just quickly go through that. The report covers breaches for the period 1st of January to the 31st of March 2021. Not been good with dates today, sorry. The first part covers the contribution breaches that we do at our end. This is nothing to do with our PPA, and we've not had any issues at all with it for the last quarter. We've not had any breaches, and incidents have been low as well. We do record incidents where we've had maybe a little issue with an employer in getting contributions. That's what's recorded there, but that's low for the first 2 months, for January and March of 22. And we have had no breaches at all. Around data breaches, this particular period is probably a little bit high. Maybe Janet can say something on this, but we have had 8 data breaches. You can see the reasons for the breaches that Janet kindly provides, but none of them were deemed significant to warrant reporting to the Information Commissioner. Mm-hmm. Then lastly, in terms of what Janet has already mentioned, the administration breaches are now split between the Code of Practice 14 breaches and the LPPA process breaches. Yeah, we've had 3 breaches in the last quarter. One which was a Code of Practice 14, which is around identified by. Sorry, this was an aggregation issue for a member that they had, and then you had 2 process breaches, which were around. The one was around an email going to the wrong person, but it didn't contain any personal data, so it wasn't a data breach. And there was also a member requested a transfer of a FS-AVC. A request was made to LCPF to process when LPPA should have known this is not allowed. So the transfer was not processed. So that was another process breach. And there was three administration breaches for the quarter itself. But again, none of them were material and didn't require any further action.
Good. Thank you very much, Mukhtar and Janet. Yvonne, you're down to lead on this. Any thoughts, comments?
Yeah, I just had a couple of thoughts. So just going first of all to the contributions breaches, so the pension fund one. I think it's something that I think of every time we look at this paper is, I know that the numbers are small, but are the incidents of the late payers, are they repeat offenders? You know, is it the same employers that, you know, we're potentially having issues with? That's always what I think of when I'm looking at these figures, you know, if it is just purely random, you know, so that's kind of my initial thought around that. Then moving on to the data, just one thing around the data breaches, so it's to do with actual paper, you know, so letters, P60s, paybacks going to the wrong individual, to the wrong address. I thought the printing was all done externally, so I was kind of surprised that, you know, these incidents were happening, that, you know, it was even possible. I know it's down to human error, but I was just surprised that there was still, you know, incidents like this occurring. And then the other one is probably a question for Janet. It's where the breaches have been broken down as the data breaches, the Code of Practice, and the LPPA process breaches. Under the LPPA process breach, it has an example as being the use of personal email or phone. And I was just curious as to what was meant by that.
Yes, so what's meant by that is with everyone working from home, they are only, when they're doing their casework, they should only be sending emails from their official LPPA email address. They shouldn't be sending emails anywhere from their own personal emails. And likewise, if they're making phone calls to members, they should either use the Teams facility telephone system, or if they have a works corporate mobile, they can use that, but they're not allowed to make phone calls using their own personal mobile phones.
That's fine, thank you. I've been racking my brains as to what on earth that meant. And I would never have got there, but it makes perfect sense now you've said it. Thank you. Okay. No, that's it. Thank you, William.
do you want? Shall I just respond on the contributions?
Yes,
Yvonne?
please,
Yeah,
Mukhtar.
just. I mean, I haven't got an answer. That's the response to that. I don't know. I mean, I just get the numbers at the end of the day. But it's a good point. There could be repeat offenders. I mean, there is an escalation process. So if they, if over 3 periods we don't get contributions, then it becomes a breach. So no one actually gets to 3 periods. But it's a good point. There could be, generally, if there's issues around collecting the contribution, then it's usually picked up fairly quickly. But I'll find out I'll find out, and maybe I'll get back to you.
Yeah, it's just, you know, if there's a training issue or some education issue that, you know, because my initial thought as well was, oh, interest, you know, because I deal with teachers, and it's like, you know, if we're an hour late with teachers, we get an invoice, you know, for late payment. But then and I know this was covered a while ago about, you know, the fund being able to charge interest for late payments, and then reading on into the Pension Fund Committee Part 1 papers, it was then covered, you know, in a further paper. But I think it'd just be interesting to know if, you know, if it is like a same group of employers, you know, that are regularly, not necessarily, you know, 3 sequential months, you know, but maybe, you know, 2 or 3 times a year, oh, it's them again, they forgot. Yeah. But yeah, I think it'd be good to know, Mukhtar, please.
Will do.
Any questions on that? Yep, Catherine.
Thank you. Just a short query on the data breaches. It mentions in Q4 that there are 8 incidents. Is that because in 2 of the incidents that are listed, 2 members were involved, so each is counted as a separate incident? So in the table, we've got 2 members in January were sent documentation to 2 other members, and then the very last one was a letter attachment mixed up between 2 members. Is that how it's counted? I'm just wondering how the breaches are counted. Thank you.
Yeah, so if it's one breach that has impacted 2 members, it would be classed as one breach with 2 members impacted. But if it's 2 members that individually have been sent the wrong attachments, for example, it would be 2 breaches. One thing that I would make you aware of is in May, we are delivering a whole data protection session to the whole of LPPA, and previously sort of the mandatory data protection sessions have been very high level, and I don't really think they've landed with the administrators. So what we've done for May is we have made it very, very granular, and it's all about administration and how administration work can cause a breach and how to prevent them. So I'm really, really hopeful that after that session we will see a decline in these breaches.
Excellent.
But I'm hopeful.
Matthew.
Thank you. Utterly trivial clarification, but at the very bottom of page 53, it says none of the breaches were not material or worthy of reporting to the regulator. I assume that was supposed to say none of the breaches were material or worthy of reporting.
Oh, yeah, sorry, Matthew.
Yep. Okay. Thank you, Matthew. I did pick up the same point too, but thank you. Right, are we happy to note the breaches report? Yep, okay, lovely. Well, Janet, thank you very much for your attendance and for presenting that. And certainly looks like the work is being done. Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, we're now going to get back to see if you'd like to leave, please, Janet.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thank you, goodbye. Right, we're now going to go back to item 9, which is the risk register review. And be very clear, this is not about the actual risk register as it stands today, which we are talking about later on in part 2. This is about looking forward as to whether we could improve the way in which the risk register is actually presented to us and to the committee. So, Mukhtar, do you want to lead on this?
Yes, I can do it, Chair, yeah.
I have your name by it.
Yeah, Yeah, risk register review. The board have made some sort of comments around ways in which we can kind of improve the risk register, and hence we've put forward this paper, which is kind of a starter for 10 for areas that we could look at for where we can discuss and possibly agree of how we can develop the register. Just to give you a little bit of the background, the register was already in place when I came. There was a piece of work that was done by, funnily enough, was PwC at the time in 2017, and they developed the risk register that we currently use. So that's the risk register that is in place. We've continued with the same format, and it hasn't really changed at all. There's been a number of views in relation to the actual register itself from yourselves mainly, really. But some of the kind of issues. So what I've done in the report, I've kind of put kind of, I don't want to go through the whole report, but there's a number of issues that I've pointed out here. So for us, what has kind of developed over time is that for me is the sheer number of stakeholders that have to contribute to the report. So it is quite time consuming, because I am kind of liaising with fund officers, independent advisors, the LPPA, LPPI. So there's lots of people that contribute to the report. Recently, the split between LPPI and LPPA has caused it to become more complex as a register. Microsoft Excel isn't probably the easiest tool to be used to be just as a piece of software for the register. So that's been difficult really for as well. And I suppose really for us, it's a complex risk register. And hence we do need to make sure that it's easily understandable and accessible by the parties that are going to receive it. So what I've put here, if you look at the table, which is I've called areas for potential improvement, I've had little discussions with a number of individuals, and we've kind of put a few things together. I've got ideas of the way I want to probably go with this, but you can obviously tell me what you feel is the right way. So first of all, is the frequency. How often do we do the report itself? We currently do it 6 monthly. That's the way it's done. Clearly there's a move now to move to quarterly, and maybe the board can advise on that. There's been discussion about and if we do go quarterly, do we do full register every quarter? So the options are, if we do full register each quarter? Do we then do full register every 6 months and then key risk reporting every quarter? Or do we have a focus on different risk areas every quarter? So that's another way of doing it as well. If you want my view, my view on this one, I think we should always keep it as, my view is we'll keep it full register, and whether that's quarterly or 6 monthly, I think there's a possibility we could miss something if we didn't do the full thing. But that's one of the issues there. We could split the register. We could have a fund risk register, an LPPA risk register, an LPPI risk register. One of the things that we've probably not been great at is around change control and ease of maintenance. So one of the things I've suggested is that we split the risk register. We take the controls and actions out of the risk register, keep that as a separate document, and that could then be reviewed and updated by the various partners. And we've got like an auditable trail of who has how they've contributed and what they've contributed every quarter or whenever the period is. And the other improvements we've kind of talked about is having a heat map, and I think that makes sense to do that. There's risk symptom, not sure really what that one is, but and then there's risk status, which is whether a risk is open or closed, could also be on there. So I'll throw this open for discussion, debate, and hopefully an agreement as to how we move forward.
Good. Thank you very much, Mukhtar. And I think what we want to try and get out of this discussion, if we can, is just a general steer as to which direction Mukhtar should go, so that he can present something to us rather more detailed at our next meeting. Carl, you are very much our resident expert in this area. What do you think?
Far from expert, but I have got some experience of risk registers because I have to maintain one at the university I work for. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a helpful report in that it reviews things and gives options. Personally, my view would be that we go with a full risk register every 6 months, with key risks being reported every quarter. Mukhtar and I had a bit of a conversation about this, didn't we, Mukhtar? And I think for me, the issue that was originally raised that I guess led to this review was that we need to be absolutely clear about what the ultimate concern is when we're raising specific risks, and there needs to be a more. And I totally understand the difficulties in making this happen, but ideally this is best practice. Instead of it just being, in terms of assurance, a list of, these are the things that we have in place that provide assurance, there being something that's more live. So, within our own university, and this is totally just based on, an internal auditor telling us this, who has specialisms in risk registers themselves. We'll set out the risk, we'll set out the assurance, and then we'll set out the specific areas of work that have been undertaken in that particular quarter. We do ours quarterly. So, for instance, there may have been an internal audit around controls that took place in that particular quarter, just happened to take place. And, if that audit was very clean and there was no issues arising from it, then I would certainly anticipate, our governing body would certainly anticipate me highlighting that within the assurance itself, rather than just saying internally audited in accordance with the internal audit work programme, and it just being as bland a statement as that. So something that makes it more real, and, that gives us the assurance that, this is actually being reviewed, and, the controls are actually being checked. And where, risks happen and issues arise. So, let's say in that illustrative example I just gave, the internal audit took place and it didn't give a full assurance. Well, that's fine. That highlights that there is a gap in control. And that's not, we shouldn't be overly critical of that, but there should then be, what we're doing to address that gap in control. So that's the sort of conversation that I was having with Mukhtar, but I do fully appreciate that it's not helpful that LPP is now LPPA and LPPI, and he's got to speak to a myriad of people to get all of this information and pull it all together. It's not helpful that he's probably not getting the level of engagement that he'd like in relation to that idea. So I totally get, this. If we can't go forward with this, I'm not insisting upon it. How could I? I'm just saying that is best practice, and that's our ideal scenario. And the only other thing I'd say is, I think the heat map is, obviously a good idea. Why wouldn't I? It was mine. So, but just in general, I think it's a step in the right direction. I'm not sure about the splitting of the risks. That's such a big deal anyway, between fund, LPP and LPPI. The risks should be split perhaps operationally and strategically. And the vast majority of the operational risks, I might suggest would be administration based, although there will be obviously operational risks that are investment based as well. But having said that, given the way we're set up at the moment, it may be that we have no choice other than to go down that route. So those are the comments that I would have.
Thank you, Carl. Sean, your hand's raised.
Thanks, Chair. It was just to pick up on the point around LPPA, LPPI and the fund and all the different parties being involved. When Mukhtar and myself have been looking into this, we had a chat with LCC risk register individual who owns that, and one thing he mentioned was the concept of confidence and having targets. So it was quite useful because we have a series of mitigations, some of which we aren't responsible for running. You know, it's LPPA, for instance, that might undertake a specific action. And what we thought we could do was look to push them on those issues and say, right, okay, you know, is this particular control working? If you've made a change to it, when's it going to be implemented? And alongside that, we make clear who owns that particular control, so that we're not absolving ourselves from responsibility, because we know as a fund we're accountable. But we're being clear that there are particular individuals who play a really important role in controlling these different aspects of the risk, and we want to document that and make sure that they give us all the engagement and assurance, etc., that we need to happily say that we're managing that risk adequately.
You got a thumbs up on that, Sean?
Right.
Does anybody else, who else would like to come in on this? Okay, Kevin.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because having previously been on the pension fund committee, the risk register item on the agenda tends to come towards the end when we're pressed for time. So it doesn't get the thorough look at that it deserves. So I'm glad to hear what's just been said, because I think it's a very important role for this board to make sure we're on the ball with this. Because one of the issues I've always found, and it's interesting hearing from Carl about Edge Hill. My previous life was at UCLAN, and you know, we had to do that all the time, quite rightly. But with risk registers, a lot of it's down to actual judgment rather than absolute clear evidence. And so it may well help us over the longer term to, from meeting to meeting or every 6 months, whatever it might be, to pick on a particular area and really dig deep and ask serious questions. Because with risk registers, never believe what's put in front of you, because it is a question of judgment. And this is, you know, if risk registers get it wrong and something goes seriously wrong, well, you know, we're all responsible. So this is one of our big issues, I think. Yeah. Thank you.
I'm just to give Mukhtar some help to take this forward. Should we just go through his 4 kind of questions, just try and get a very quick view as to whether there's agreement or not? And the first one is whether we should look at the full risk every quarter, every 6 months, or kind of stagger it a bit. And I kind of get the sense that the full register every 6 months with key risk reporting every quarter is probably the right place to be. I can see nodding heads, Mukhtar. You've got a decision there.
Well, yeah. Okay.
Good. The second question is about splitting the register, and again, I'm getting the sense from what people are saying that that's a negative. Agreed? Yeah, Deborah. Deborah?
The only reason I thought it would be an idea to split them was really around the risk appetite within LPPA and LPPI. But obviously, I'll go with the majority. If it's not wise to split, in terms of presentation, then leave it as a whole.
It might be what Kevin's just said. So just, you know, kind of every year, you know, once a year, we might have a look at a particular area in a bit more depth, something like that, but still not actually split it as such.
Okay.
William, I don't have any great, you know, issue with it being split in that way. You know, it's whatever's, you know, so I'm completely supportive of, I understand where Deborah's coming from there, and I'd be absolutely fine by that. You know, and if Mukhtar thought that was the best way to do it, I'd be fine with that too. What matters to me is that all of the significant risks are highlighted. Yep. And that, you know, they're very clearly highlighted alongside the assurance, any gaps in control, who's responsible, and an implementation date where there are gaps in control. That's what matters.
I suppose with that one, I'll work on the basis that as is, but we'll look to see whether we can put all the risks in those categories. And if that works, then we can do that.
Yeah. Okay, Mukhtar, you have some discretion on that one.
That's right.
And the third one is kind of change control and ease of maintenance, i.e. kind of separating the controls and actions from the main register. And you've heard some of the arguments kind of pro and con. Are there any views on which way, you know, whether there's a better way to go there, or is it again something to leave for Mukhtar to think through himself? Mukhtar.
Personally, what the one of the things that Mike always says is the document's too big and there's a lot of information in there. I think if we took the controls and the actions out into another document, which is kind of almost we have change control over that, and then the risk register effectively has what the risk is and what the residual and the inherent and residual risks are. It makes it a very easy view, and it would certainly help me because we're moving some more of the kind of textual stuff into Word, which would be easier to maintain. I think potentially it'd be more easy for presentation. But again, these are it can be almost a prototyping approach. I could try that next time. If that works, all well and good, or we can go back to the previous way if that doesn't work.
Okay, I mean, are you happy with that approach? I'm happy again to look to have a go at that way, and if it doesn't, we come back to us. And if we decide it doesn't work, we can always revert to where we were.
Absolutely.
Okay, and then the final area was just any other improvements. And heat maps, there seems to be some appetite for. Whether we can monitor the symptoms to alert us, take the temperature at any point as to whether any kind of symptoms showing a bit redder. Again, I mean, are there strong views on any of those? Heat maps, there does seem to be some appetite. Any of the other ones?
I like the idea of the symptoms. I think that could be quite insightful, as long as it isn't a tremendous amount of extra work.
Well, that I suspect may be where the issue is. Look, do you have a view as a person who's actually going to have to take the temperature?
It's like what Kevin has said. This is all subjective, and we can try that certainly and see where we can get to it. And if it is meaningful, and it gives added value for the board and committee, then we can try. We can try. That's clear.
Okay, Tony, your hand's up.
Yes, it's just to say, I think once I think it does make sense for them to be removed once they're closed, because otherwise the document just simply gets bigger and bigger like a snowball, and you need to reduce it if you get an opportunity. But I don't know whether that needs a sign off from us to say that a risk is closed, and because I also wonder whether any risks are actually ever closed or entirely eliminated. It's simply they vary in colour from and heat.
Tony, the way it's worked previously is the one that when it's closed, it's taken off and it's been just stated in the actual report that it's come off. There's value in having an identifier that says whether it's a current risk or a closed risk. But obviously, once it's closed, it does come off. It should come off. Yes.
But I think somebody, whether it's the committee or ourselves, should have a sign off on that.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Any other points on this? We've had, I think, a very helpful, insightful discussion. Look, does that give you enough to go away with?
Absolutely. Yes. Absolutely. Just in terms of timescales, are we looking for this at the next time it's due for the board? Which one is the next?
July is the next meeting. I mean, it would be great to have a prototype for July, if it's possible. The idea being that we could then maybe begin to start to incorporate it in October or January.
I suppose in terms of the cycle of things, William, it would be the subsequent one because the risk register come to this one. But yes, maybe we can look to see whether there's some kind of prototype.
Otherwise, suggest maybe you take one area, just do a prototype in one area for us to look at.
We could do that. Could do that one. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much indeed. I think unless there's any other comments, I'm going to close that item. So we're kind of running out of time. Okay, item 11, which is the part 1 reports presented to the most recent Pension Fund Committee. Sean, I think you wanted just to kind of overview this to try and save time a bit, didn't you?
Yes, Chair. So the main highlights that I draw to people's attention, there were several statements that were and policies that were signed off at the Pension Fund Committee, and this included the investment strategy statement. So that followed on from the work that was done in 2020, where we looked at the investment strategy review. It was the final stage in this work really, and it required content to be developed around strategic asset allocation, the benchmarks that we use, responsible investment, things like that. That got approved, and it's been updated on the website that we have, as well as some of the policies such as the pension admin strategy statement. Also, there was discussion and agreement around the 21-22 budget that was approved. And when you actually look at the budget itself, it does appear that there's a deficit for the forthcoming year of 37 million. But as Michelle addressed in the meeting itself, there was a prepayment of employer contributions in 2020. And when that's spread over the period of time over which they would normally be paid, had it not been for prepayment, there's a surplus for this year of 49 million. And we did highlight that there's been an increase in some costs, including oversight and governance costs as a result of moving the employer risk side of work in-house. Colin had discussed that earlier. We also looked at the strategic plan, and that was signed off. We've touched on that at various points in the meeting today, but there's several key projects that are emerging as the team have worked through analysing what work we need to do on that. And things like the service-based review, employer risk, looking at the single code of practice that's came out from the regulator. And these are all things that will come to the board throughout the course of the year as we work through them. And then finally, the training plan was agreed, subject to inclusion of content on the cloud and responsible investment and service-based review. And also the work plan of the board was noted by the committee. So they were the main highlights from the paper. But if you want me to pick up on any other aspect of the meeting, please let me know. Thank you.
Good. We're requested to comment on these. I know I've given kind of various areas of responsibility to a number of you. Does anybody wish to make any comments about them?
In terms of the strategic asset allocation, my only comment really was to say that we are aware that it went through a very rigorous process previously, and feel very assured by that process. So have no issues with that. And in relation to responsible investment, that's been taken into account as well.
Good. Thank you, Deborah. Any other comments on the Part 1 reports?
Just a quick question. It was just to do with the admissions, the terminations policy. It said it was going out to employers for consultation. I just wanted to make sure I'd not missed that with our email issue, and whether or not it had gone out yet.
I have on, yeah. No, it's not gone out yet. Right. It'll be going out with a consultation end date of May, so it should be going out in the next few days.
Right. That's fine. Thanks, Colin.
Okay, any other comments? Yep, Deborah.
So is this on any of the Part 1 reports?
Yeah, any of the Part 1 reports, yes. This is item 11.
I mean, there was some minor points on the ones that I wasn't lead for, so I won't mention those. But just on the responsible investment report, again, I do think it's worth noting that there is really, I think, an extremely visible improvement in the way that the responsible investment report has been presented. And I think that the most useful aspect was the table of references that was included at the end. So I'd really like to sort of formally thank LPP for that, because I do think it's improved the quality of the reporting quite substantially.
Good, thank you. Right, in which case, if you're happy with that we have commented on item 11, I shall move to item 12, urgent business. Good, I haven't received any urgent business. So does anybody else wish to raise anything really urgent? Nope. Okay, good. Item 13, the next meeting is the 6th of July, 2021. Item 14, exclusion of press and public. We were asked to consider whether under section 100A4 of the LGA 72, we consider that the public should be excluded from the meeting. during consideration of the following items of business, on the grounds that there would be likely disclosure of exempt information as defined by the appropriate paragraph 112A LGA 72. Are we happy to exclude the public? Okay, yep. Right, Mike, we'll just have a quick pause.